Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining us for our Tuesday weather update recorded on the 15th of July. Out to our west, we've got plenty of showery activity as this cold front zips over the country. We've seen some thunderstorms through Tuesday morning around Northland, and there might be one or two other thunderstorms coming into the western side of the country as we go across the day. You can see a few more still out at sea, although fairly isolated. Similar story for the west coast, some heavy downpours with thunderstorms in there as that front moves on through, but eastern areas pretty much dry, maybe a little bit of wet weather as that front passes over later today and this evening. So on the air pressure map this evening, you can see low pressure to the east of the North Island, just north of the Chathams, and behind that low pressure system there is the colder airflow coming in. So that could produce a bit of snow around the southern alpine passes today and tonight. Not a huge amount, but enough to be aware of. I think Met Service may even have a warning in force for that, so keep up to date with what is going on. Not a massive amount of moisture in that system, but enough to produce some lower level snow on the mountains and ranges and the alpine passes. Not going down a lot lower than that though. 6 p.m. tonight, so colder wind coming through here, colder airflow pushing in, coming into the North Island because of the shape of the low out to the east. It's kind of going around that and being fed in as a westerly, which is going to pick up across Tuesday with some strong gusts here and there and a few showers coming in off the Tasman Sea. So fairly typical weather for this time of the year. Windy, bit colder, some showers, but once more, eastern areas are the driest, but there might be, as I just said before, a bit of spillover tonight from those western showers coming over to some eastern areas, but it doesn't look like it is going to be very much, and certainly fairly dry around the South Island. Here on Wednesday, you can see a little bit of wet weather. That's possibly that risk of a few snow flurries at higher levels. Southerly winds coming in across the country, although once again, these aren't coming from Antarctica. These are more localized southerlies, which is why even though we do have a temperature drop, it is not a major one for most people, and still large dry areas in the mix here as we go through Wednesday. That low to the east encouraging a windy southerly or even more of a sou'wester for many regions. In the east, that's usually not too wet, but you can see a few showers still left over around the North Island. Frost risks, as we talked about yesterday, Thursday morning certainly does bring a frost risk through the interior of the South Island. A similar story here on Friday as well, whereas central parts of the North Island just not as cold as we've been seeing across this year. The North Island's just not getting the frost that the South Island has been getting. So noon Thursday, clearer skies, that's why you've got that frost risk, and the polar airflow comes right up to about Cook Strait. But we do have this new low forming around the top of the North Island. Doesn't look too stormy, doesn't also look to produce a huge amount of rain, but on a very localized basis, you may have a thunderstorm or a heavy downpour as a result of that low just sort of churning away around Bay of Plenty, and that could affect Coromandel Peninsula, maybe other parts of the North Island. So just keep an eye on that one here on Thursday, but many other places not seeing much in the way of severe weather risks this week. So it's certainly a calmer week overall, even with the rain that we've got coming through and some of that windy weather, not as big, not as complicated as it was last week. So as we end the week, low pressure drifts out to the east, south to southwesterly winds around the North Island, lighter winds for the South Island, and then the further south you go, those westerly winds out of the Australia region move in. And so that's why your frost risk on Friday, especially around Southland, starts to reduce a wee bit as a result of that westerly wind. So this weekend, westerlies carry on out of Australia, severe weather risks for Tasmania, but we don't really have that severe weather risk. What you do notice though is the blue line measuring or showing the polar airflow coming right up into the North Island. So Saturday just may be a couple of degrees cooler around the North Island, especially during the day. You probably notice it a bit more, but with windy weather around, the overnight temperatures aren't going down as much as they could do. And by Sunday, the severe weather that was around Tassie moves over to the South Island. We get a burst of windy westerlies and northwesterlies developing, but the top of the country, you'll be pleased to see this big high pressure zone on the way. We haven't seen a lot of high pressure around lately. This does give us some chance, but before it arrives, windy south to southwesterlies coming through, another colder burst of weather, quite normal ahead of a high pressure zone at this time of the year to get that southerly burst. But look what's happening over in Australia. This is a significant area of low pressure over the Great Australian Bight. Severe weather risks right across the southern parts of Australia. So we're protected from that for now going into next week. but we'll be monitoring what happens once that high drifts off to the east, and we've got maybe some severe weather risks coming into New Zealand. It's a long way out, and a lot of things will still change before that low ends up in the New Zealand area. May well break apart into something quite different, but still worth monitoring. That's all from me for today. I'll catch you again tomorrow, Wednesday, with our next New Zealand update. We'll see you then.